Hi there, it's Sandy Allnock with this month's Create in Color segment for MFT. Excited to be here with you as always, and this time we're going to talk about watercolor, and I'm going to use these cute birds. Aren't they adorable? I'm going to make a wreath out of them, but I want to talk a little about the watercolors and the brushes. The silver brushes that I use, and I use them all over my channel too, are the ones that I recommend. This is an 8 and I've got a 12 with it as well. If you do backgrounds, a 12 is great. If you do general stuff, an 8 will work. You can go smaller, but the smaller you go, the more detail you get stuck into, and you don't get to do that kind of loose, crazy watercolor wash. The card on the left with the dots is a dot card. I'll talk about that a little bit more, but the colors that are in the dot card are in my palette. So you've seen my palette probably if you've seen a number of my videos, and I squeeze from the tubes into these. And my favorite 18 colors are on this dot card. You can make your own dot card as well. Just take a piece of watercolor cardstock and put a dot of paint on them, and you can make that your own little set that you can use when you travel. But I am going to paint off this dot card that Daniel Smith made with my favorite colors on it and show you how you can use those really easily to paint with. And I've stamped my birds around in a circle. So I kind of played around with which ones were going to go well with which directions, because I kind of couldn't figure out whether or not having all their tails sticking out one direction was going to be good. Should all the tails be on the outside? And this is the arrangement I ended up coming up with by stamping them onto little scraps of masking paper and then sticking them down and kind of keep arranging them until I was happy with them, and then stamp them all here. And what I'm doing is painting them. I painted some flowers and I just did really loose shapes. Like anybody can paint 5 petals on a flower. It's really easy to do. Just put down a blob of paint and make 5 petals, and don't worry about making them perfect. While they're drying, because I don't want them to bleed into the wreath background that I'm going to put in, I'm just going to do my coloring. Now what I'm doing is playing around with which colors blend with which colors and how they blend and what happens. Like that one with the blue and the yellow on it, I wanted to see how they work together. Didn't make as bright of a green as I was hoping, so I added more yellow to try to do something else with it. Not really happy with the bottom of it, but it was an experiment. And that's what I encourage you to do when you watercolor, is experiment, try things out. Find something like this where you're going to color a whole bunch of something and color it in different ways each time so you can test out different things. So here I'm going to try the purple on the bottom of the bird, and then I'm going to use some quinacridone pink on the top and see how they blend together and how they look together. And then on another one, I'm going to try doing the purple on the top and a blue on the bottom instead, and just see which one I like better. Now, if you do something like this, you could stamp a whole bunch of birds on one sheet and just save it as a reference. Just do all of the colors that you have in whatever brand you have. One of the reasons that I like the Daniel Smith paints, though, is because they're very transparent. There's other sets that I have, and I own a ton of sets of watercolors. Kind of one of those full set syndrome gals on a lot of stuff. But some of the other brands that are in crafting tend to be a little more on the chalky side. And what that means is they dry a little bit chalky. They're a little bit, I don't know, necessarily thicker, but they're not as see-through. So here you're going to get some really soft see-through looks with the Daniel Smith watercolors. And if you get the dot card, you can try out some of the colors before you actually buy them. You can get just the Sandy Allnock palette, but you can also get like full-on palette, like big cards with all the colors on them. You can get them with 60-something colors on them. There's different numbers of them, but look around online and you can definitely find those in different places. To make the wreath that I'm doing, I'm painting around all the things that are there. So around some of the pink flowers, I'm starting with my color and then laying my brush down so I get water outside of that, and it's going to make the paint softer toward the whatever the edge is that I'm going toward, whether it's the edge toward the middle or the edge toward the outside. But I'm letting this first layer be super, super soft and lightening it up as much as I can, and letting some of those outer edges be hard edges. So I'm making little actual lines, and other places where I'm letting it blend softly. I'm not trying to make it round, because a wreath like this, if it came out perfectly round, would kind of be a challenge anyway. And you'll notice there's some places where I put the paint down and it's like, oh my gosh, it's really thick. And then you take a clean brush and move that color around and it's gonna smooth out a little bit better. Now, if you let it dry before you do that, then that could be a problem. So now that I've gotten all the first layer done, I'm adding a second layer. And I've hardly even cracked the little dot that's there of paint. I mean, these little dot cards take a long time to use up when you're just making cards out of them and stuff. So you get a lot of pigment to play with out of those. And the dot cards aren't very expensive when you're talking about that versus buying a whole bunch of paint and a palette and putting tubes in the palette and everything. So if you just want to try out watercolors, they're a fun option. But I'm just kind of scribbling around with some of the color and letting it just be a wreath with just real quick little marks. I'm not trying to draw every leaf or anything. I'm just kind of playing around with it. And what I do is I kind of squint as I look at it to see if there's some parts that are darker or lighter. That sometimes helps to know where you need to work next. And I wanted a little more dark color in the flowers, but I wasn't really thrilled with what I was doing here. So I came up with another solution to do after I get the flowers finished. But they are brighter, and that's the main thing that I was really looking for, because they had dried so softly that you couldn't really see much anymore. So I wanted to make sure you could see lots of nice bright pink color here. So I let it dry a little bit, and then I just put a little bit of sketchy lines around them. And you could draw the flowers first. There's also flower stamps in the little stamp set I'm using, but those would be really hard edges. And I wanted the birds to be the thing that really sings in this. Haha, get the pun, sings. So instead of making really hard-edged, clean flowers, if I make these sort of sketchy and loose and not even connecting all the lines and stuff, then it allows them to be a little bit softer and kind of off in the distance rather than being the thing that's really important, which is the birds. And I was deciding whether or not I wanted to do much in terms of lines for any kind of leaves. And I almost wish that I hadn't done this, because then it's either you got to commit to it and do a lot or just not do any. And I did just a few, and I'm not sure if that was the best decision. You can tell me whether or not you think I've ruined it by adding more lines to it, because it just added more fussiness. I almost liked it without those. But you can learn from my lesson and decide what you want to do. The finished card came out really pretty. I just mounted it onto some dimensional adhesive, and there you go. So I hope you enjoyed this month's video. If you did, click that like button. Make sure you follow MFT to get lots of great, wonderful ideas for the future. And I'll see you again next month. Take care. Bye-bye.